away. किस चीज का? सर वो जिस तरह का इन फ्रेम्स नहीं ट्रांसफर कर पा रहे हैं. गुड मॉर्निंग सर. सर लाइव तो हो गया है. ये एक बार मुझे लिंक चाहिए इसकी. वो यूट्यूब से ले रहा हूँ. नेट नहीं चल रहा. नहीं जा रहा है क्या? सर नेट में लगा तो दिक्कत नहीं हो रही है सर. स्ट्रीम की सर वो तो बस कनेक्ट करने के लिए स्ट्रीम की वो इसका लिंक वही सर वही मैं कर रहा हूँ. इससे टाइप कर रहा हूँ यूट्यूब पे सिनर्जी पॉइंट ऑफ इंडियन इकोनॉमी. ये आ जाना चाहिए. नेट से ले रहे आई नहीं रहा. वही लाइव वाला लाइव तो ज़्यादा सभी दिखाया ना साइड में नंबर से लाइव तो हो रहा है. हाँ 2030 ये 2030 है. अच्छा देखो सर लाइव स्ट्रीम तो हुई. मैंने कहा बाहर जाके एक बार देखा तो मैंने नेट बाहर आ जाए. ये लो बस देखना है सबसे ज्यादा राइट बजाओ कोई दिक्कत नहीं सब गए ये क्या हुआ कैमरा लेके किया वो एक बार कैमरा बंद कर ये सुन लो देखो सर हो गया सर इधर बैठ जाओ रहा था अभी देखिए नॉइज तो नहीं आ रहा इसका माइक ऑन था हाँ कल कौन सा माइक लिया था ऑडियो इनपुट अर्पित बोल रहा लेने की नहीं जरूरत पड़ी कल तो यार इसमें या तो ये अब एक बार देखिए कोई साउंड आ रहा है क्या हेलो 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 सर अभी भी आ रही है और भी क्लियर आ रही है तो पहले से
योगी इसमें ही दिक्कत है।
सर इसमें कोई बिल्ट इन माइक्रोफोन है ना, इसको सेलेक्ट करो एक बार।
ये टम
हाँ नहीं बिल्ट इन माइक्रोफोन।
एक बार चेक कर इसको बार बार।
It's not only moving that creates new starting points. Sometimes, all it takes is a subtle shift in perspective, an opening of the mind, an intentional pause, and a reset or a new route to see new opportunities and possibilities. A very good morning to this August gathering. I, Ferry Jain,
And I, Karishma Malhotra,
welcome you all to Synergy Conclave 2022. Every year, it has been a sense of gratification for the Department of Economics, St. Xavier's College, Jaipur, to organize our National Economic Fest, Synergy. And yet again, we are here with a more insightful and intellectual version, Synergy Conclave 2022, the session on the theme Indian Economy at 2030. Ladies and gentlemen, before we continue with the program, I would like to take a moment to recognize and thank the sponsors of this event. Our co-sponsors for this event are State Bank of India and Triumphant Institute of Management. Our event sponsors are EcoMog and Kanishka Classes. Their support has been instrumental in making this event a reality.
Synergy, which has been a core part of the Department of Economics since 2012, is a national level event that allows students from across the country to use their knowledge in economics, policy making, finance, and business to solve real world problems. This year, we continue the tradition of synergy and strive to uphold the motto of synergizing the ideas by transforming current discussions and venturing into new and uncharted territories. It gives us immense pleasure to have among us Father Dr. Arogya Swami S.J., Manager, Reverend Father Dr. Erix Angelo S.J., Principal, Father Raymond Carabin, Vice Principal, Professor Meeta Mathur, Director, Niti Aayog Chair, University of Rajasthan, and our eminent speakers of the day. Professor N.R. Bhanumurthy, Vice Chancellor, Dr. B.R. Ambedkar School of Economics, Ms. Pooja Mehra, Consulting Editor, The Mint, Dr. Ashwini K. Swen, Fellow, Center for Policy Research, Dr. Ankush Agarwal, Associate Professor, IIT Delhi, and respected faculty members along with this attentive audience and media. We extend a warm welcome to all of you for the Synergy Conclave. Don't judge each day by the harvest you reap, but by the seeds that you plant. As a token of our gratitude for your presence, we would like to present you with a small green sapling. These saplings symbolize our commitment to preserving the environment and the importance of taking care of the planet. I request Father Dr. Arogya Swami S.J., Manager, to present a sapling to Professor N.R. Bhanumurthy. Thank you, Father. Thank you, sir. I request Reverend Father Dr. Arex Angelo, SJ, Principal, to present a sapling to Ms. Pooja Mehra. Thank you, Father. Thank you, ma'am. I request Father Raymond Kerubin, Vice Principal, to present a sapling to Dr. Ankush Agarwal. Thank you, Father. Thank you, sir. I request Dr. Father Amal Das to present a sapling to Dr. Ashwini K. Swin. Thank you, Father. Thank you, sir. I request Ms. Purvi Medatwal, Head, Department of Economics, to present a sapling to Professor Meeta Mathur. Thank you, ma'am.
The light of the lamp is not only for the lamp, but for the whole world. With this thought in mind, I request respected Father Dr. Arukya Swami, SJ Manager, Reverend Father Dr. Arex Angelo, SJ Principal, and Father Raymond Kerubin, Vice Principal, and dignitaries to please lead the way and light the lamp. Thank you, dignitaries.
Gratitude lifts our eyes off the things we lack so we might see the blessings we possess. I would like to invite Father Dr. Arokya Swami, SJ, Manager, St. Xavier's College, Jaipur, to come forward and enlighten us with his wise words.
A very good morning to each one of you. Respected fathers, Father X, our principal, Father Raymond, Vice Principal, Father Amal, Professor Meeta Mathur, Direct Niti Aayog Chair, University of Rajasthan, Dr. N.R. Bhanumurthy, Vice Chancellor, B. R. Ambedkar School of Economics, University Bengaluru, Dr. Ashwini K. Swain, Fellow CPR, New Delhi, Ms. Pooja Mehra, Consulting Editor, Mint, New Delhi, Dr. Ankush Agarwal, IIT Delhi, New Delhi, all the other dignitaries present here, faculty members, students from various colleges, and students from various schools, and all my dear students. I was just going through the topic and also the occasion today. In fact, I was reminded of my own college days. Up to graduation, I was also a student of economics. Then later came to anthropology, then ended up in sociology. As I was reflecting on for this day, if I want to share a couple of thoughts, a few words, I came across a couple of quotes. And one thing which I cannot but repeat it today, the definition on sustainable development. When you're talking about economics, society, development, definitely we all of us think about it and talk about sustainable development. Sustainable development of the nation, the world, the country, and even human person. This particular definition given by the World Commission of Environment and Development Chair, Harlem Brundtland. Sustainable development is the development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. In that connection, I also came across what our present Prime Minister, Mr. Narendra Modi, has said. Economic development cannot take a nation forward on its own. We need society and economy which complement each other. We need to take care of the poor, deprived, and the left behind section of the society. I totally agree. When you're talking about development, it is development, people are the center of the development. The means and end are people. Peter Drucker rightly said, the ultimate resource in economic development is people. It is people, not capital or raw materials, that develop an economy. When I spent about 5 years in Europe, one of the objectives was to observe how a developed country behaves. Or, when you talk about countries developed, what are the criteria, parameters, a visible mark of a developed nation, a developed society? For my understanding, I focused on three things on a day-to-day basis observation. One, the field of education. Some countries in the West, when they talk about education for all, they mean it. And also, to our surprise, those who go to government school, they take greater pride than those who go to private school. The reason is simple. Government has better quality than the private certain countries. Here I am not comparing just for sake of comparison, just for us to learn. At the same time, I'm not praising that everything is bright the other side. The second aspect, and in fact the education along with employment. Everyone gets an opportunity to study and also everyone gets an opportunity to work and live in a dignified way. That is sign of development. The second aspect, that is something very close to my heart. We all talk about environment, sustainable environment, clean environment, Swachh Bharat Abhiyan, Swachhata, etc. If you look around our own waste management, we dump everything in one dustbin. We dump everything in one dustbin. Given to the size of the population, we are not in a position to really segregate the waste, manage the waste, so that we can claim that we have a clean and green environment. We need to think about that. Because many countries have gone up to 95% of success in waste management, whereas we have not even succeeded 5%. The third area is traffic sense. If a country is developed, a society is developed, a society has values to claim that we are a civilized nation, civilized country, a civilized economy, the traffic sense that we display daily basis on the road. These three criteria tell me many other criteria are there, but these three areas at least tell me to find out a nation is developed, a society is developed, the economy is developed. Today we have wonderful theme and also eminent speakers amongst us to enlighten us, inspire us, perhaps instill in us to get new ideas so that we also become citizens responsible to develop this nation to a better nation. And I wish every one of you all the best. Enjoy the day, enjoy the session. God bless you. Thank you.
Thank you, Father, for your enlightening words.
Now, I kindly request Reverend Father Dr. Eric Sanchlo, SD Principal, to address the gathering with his inspiring words as we move forward.
Good morning to all of you. Good morning. Reverend Father Aayog, the manager, Reverend Father Raymond, the vice principal, Father Amal Das, and a galaxy of intellectuals, Dr. N.R. Bhanumurthy, Vice Chancellor, Dr. B.R. Ambedkar School of Economics, University, Bengaluru, Ms. Pooja Mehra, Consulting Editor, The Mint, Dr. Ankush Agarwal, Associate Professor, IIT Delhi, and Dr. Ashwini K. Swain, Fellow, Center for Policy Research, invited guests and others, and my beloved students. Yesterday in a seminar, in a conclave on banking, I shared with some of our students that out of the 117 billion people who have ever lived on earth, out of which 93% of the people have gone ahead of us, disappeared from the face of the earth. Right now we are about 8 billion human beings. Putting all human beings together, we can say that humanity and economics have always gone together. Economics is as old as humanity. The moment there were two people, economy has already started. I am very much fascinated by the presence of several intellectuals in our campus. And the theme you have selected is Indian Economics 2030. I was just browsing through the internet to see what would be the growing economies in the world. Out of the 5 fast growing economies in the world, countries like Morocco, Nigeria, Fiji, these are the countries which were not well known. Now they are galloping. India has always been rated as one of the fastest developing economies, superseding Germany, Japan, etc. On the other hand, we know we grow only at the rate of about 6.3%. That is projected that way. With a huge population, going to be the most populous country in the world, with such a lot of illiterate people, a country which can boast of this unique feature, namely the highest number of educated graduates, the biggest army of illiterate people. Only these things can coexist in a country like ours. How can Indian economy vibrant with so much of illiteracy, unemployment, poverty, sickness of all sorts, the lack of cleanliness to begin with, and the widening gap between the haves and have-nots? An enlightened staff like Xavier staff should ask this question: can India truly claim that we are progressing, or part of India is progressing? We have all the richest people of the world in our country, and at the same time, there are people who spend less than 40 rupees a day per day. They are also living in our country. India is not Ambani or Adani, etc. India is the welfare of the common man. As Paulo Freire, a great educationist, said, I am not free till the last person in the society is free. If only a few are going about displaying their wealth and the vast majority are lagging behind, then we need to question that model of development. Several 5-year plans have happened. Over the years, India has developed several models of development. But unfortunately, all these models of development have only modernized poverty. We have not eradicated poverty. Therefore, it is high time budding economists like you, in the presence of enlightened minds, should pose serious questions about what is my role to develop our economy. Like any good thought, like good prayer, should lead to action. I repeat, any good thought, like good prayer, should lead to action. As a takeaway of today's conclave, each individual who is present here should ask himself or herself, what I am going to do to improve the economy of our country. I would like to congratulate the organizers for having chosen a very relevant theme, having invited the best possible people as resource persons. A golden gate is open to all. It is up to us to decide whether to enter or stand aside, wondering what to do next. Thank you. God bless you.
Thank you, Father, for your enlightening words. To keep the enthusiasm going, I would now like to invite Professor Meeta Mathur, Director, Niti Aayog Chair, University of Rajasthan, to address the audience with enlightening words.
Distinguished Father Arokya Swami, Father X Angelo, Father Vice Principal here, eminent economist Professor Bhanumurthy, Dr. Ashwini, Dr. Ankush, and the renowned journalist with us today, Ms. Pooja, our vibrant faculty members here, and dear students. A very good morning to all of you. It's good to see young and lively audience present here today for the conclave for this academic event. And more heartening is the participation
from other colleges and universities. We have students from Maharani College, from Kanoria College, from Sophia, and from St. Anselm's also, and some other colleges also. So that's great. And I believe that such academic events and such academic discussions should be interdisciplinary, so that we get to know what is happening in other field, in other areas also. It should not be restricted to a particular subject. So that's another good part of today's event. So here we are to discuss and to know more about Indian economy. India's economy, no doubt we say that India today is one of the fastest growing economy of the world. We have exhibited exceptional performance in many fields, in many areas. We have been averaging 7% growth rate, GDP growth rate, barring the recession period and the pandemic period. But at the same time, it's a fact that there are many things that the growth rate conceals. Has this growth rate actually led to the trickle-down effect that we had expected, percolating the benefits to the bottom line population and to the marginalized one? That's a big question. Lately, I was reading a research article which says that top 1% richest individuals in India appropriated 6% of total income in early 1980s. Now, this figure has gone up to 23% in 2019, which is a cause of concern. Why this inequality is increasing despite high growth rate? Our goal is not to achieve growth, but to have development. Development which does not compromise or which does not cost the future generation. Improving human development indicators and bringing about qualitative changes in the economy is what we visualize for our economy, and I think all of us agree with that. So it's not just growth, it is development that we want to achieve. Similarly, we talk about demographic dividend today. That is, we have the largest proportion of working population. But having a favorable demography is not enough until it is employable. So jobs are everything today. I think that it is jobs that will raise the income of the bottom line population, of the marginalized population. So are we creating enough jobs with our the current education system and the education system that is being proposed by our new economic policy? So we need to discuss that. There are many such issues that we need to discuss and deliberate upon, and we are sure that we will be enlightened today by our erudite speakers that we have, galaxy of speakers that we have today, and who are actually the authorities in their own areas. Now, also I would like to appreciate the Department of Economics of St. Xavier's College, who initiated in conceptualizing this idea of the conclave, and who approached Niti Aayog Chair also, and we collaborated with them for this purpose. Let me tell you something about Niti Aayog Chair also. This chair is in Rajasthan University, and we work on research and academic activities. We conduct primary data survey and primary database studies, which are assigned to us by the Niti Aayog New Delhi. And we have an advisory committee, and one of our advisory committee's members is very much with us. Professor Bhanumurthy is here. So we have discussion with the advisory committee, and we take up the projects and conduct the studies. We also involve students in those projects and studies. We provide them with the internship. So that is being offered to the students from different colleges. We also publish in Niti Aayog Chair a quarterly document, the Economic Bulletin. The bulletin actually reviews the economic trends pertaining to different sectors, and our focus is on Rajasthan. So we have published 3 issues. The 4th issue will be released today as per our program. The students from different colleges can apply to Niti Aayog Chair if they want to go for internship. It will be a learning process for the students, and we also get their contribution. So it's a two-way, you can say, benefiting both the chair's activity and also for the students. So we look towards, Niti Aayog Chair looks towards the Faculty of Economics of St. Xavier's College to have more such programs in collaboration. So finally, my best wishes to the department for today's event also. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am, for your kind words. The Indian Nobel Prize winner, Dr. Amartya Kumar Sen, once said, "Economic growth is a means, not an end. It is a necessary but not sufficient condition for human development." Every year, the conclave is centered towards a specific theme that is of socio-economic concern, with an aim to create awareness and initiate a positive and thought-provoking dialogue amongst youth. With 7 successful conclaves on the themes economic versus politics,
Dope has no hope,
no to single-use plastic, a call for youth,
vocal for local,
and climate change. This year's conclave will provide a platform for young minds to engage themselves into the critical issues of the Indian economy. Synergy Conclave 2022 unfolds the 8th edition of the conclave, focusing on the topic Indian Economy at 2030. The convention has brought together a diverse group of policymakers, academicians, and professionals to deliberate, exchange ideas, think creatively, and contribute to the conversation on Indian economy through a talk session.
Given that India's GDP for 2030 has been estimated to be $9 trillion with a growth rate of 9% per year, India's economic growth is anticipated to stay robust, driven by its strong workforce and a changing policy environment. India is predicted to become the third largest economy in the world by 2030 in terms of GDP. One of the main factors that is expected to drive the Indian economy in the next decade is the country's demographic advantage. India's population is projected to continue growing and is currently undergoing a youth bulge, which will continue to be among the youngest in the world through 2030. This one-day conclave will discuss and deliberate on a variety of such topics, including challenges and changes in the Indian economy by 2030, in the presence of well-known experts and speakers. This conclave will bring together professionals from many economic sectors, and we will endeavour to review the above-mentioned economic issues in India, as well as the experts' perspectives on the issues and India's path to growth and development by 2030.
A moderator is someone who can steer a conversation in a productive direction while still allowing all voices to be heard. Carrying this thought forward, I would like to introduce the luminary who will be moderating our discussion today. Please welcome Yashwardhan sir. Sir has an extensive knowledge in the field of economics and is presently serving as Assistant Professor, Department of Economics, and Coordinator, the Internal Quality Assurance Cell, St. Xavier's College, Jaipur. He is also the General Secretary of the Rajasthan Economic Association. He graduated in Economic Pages from St. Xavier's College, Mumbai, and holds a gold medal in post-graduation in economics from the Department of Economics, University of Rajasthan, Jaipur. He has been associated with the Niti Aayog Chair, University of Rajasthan, Jaipur, and has worked on research papers on employability, agriculture, and urban local bodies, and we are honored to have him as a moderator today.
Proceeding forward, I would like to take a moment to introduce the distinguished speakers who will be sharing their diverse knowledge and expertise with us today on the topic Indian Economy at 2030. Professor N.R. Bhanumurthy is a highly accomplished academic and researcher, currently serving as the first Vice Chancellor of the Pace University. Professor Bhanumurthy is here to shed light on the topic trade and development. Now, I request Sir to make his way to the stage and be seated. Please give a huge round of applause for Sir.
Ms. Pooja Mehra is a highly accomplished senior economic journalist with over 17 years of experience and is currently working as a consulting editor at The Mint. Ms. Pooja is here to enlighten us on the topic demographic dividend and employability and help us increase our knowledge on the topic. Now, I request ma'am to make her way to the stage and be seated. Please give a huge round of applause.
Dr. Ashwini K. Swen is an accomplished researcher currently working as a fellow at the Center for Policy Research. Sir is here to shed light on the topic climate and sustainability. Now, I request Sir to make his way to the stage and be seated. Please give a huge round of applause for Sir.
Dr. Ankush Agrawal is currently a member of the faculty of Indian Institute of Technology, Delhi. Sir will be sharing his insights on the topic Health and Human Development. Now, I request Sir to make his way to the stage and be seated. Please give a huge round of applause for Sir. I would now like to request the moderator to take on with the proceedings of the conclave.
Thank you, Ferry. A warm morning to all the eminent speakers, Reverend Fathers. The August gathering, we have students from various institutions. As we have been talking about in the beginning, the fathers have highlighted, Madam has highlighted that why this theme has been chosen and what is the relevance of this theme. I'll not take much time. Warm morning to all of you. The theme for Synergy Conclave today is Indian Economy and 2030, where we will be discussing the roadmap for our economy towards becoming the third largest and as well as attaining the sustainable development goals by 2030. So 2030 becomes a very important milestone for us. It's not just a number. So therefore, we have to discuss about certain areas like trade, economic growth and development, climate change and sustainability, demography and employment, and health and human development as they become very important as we eye on 2030. To orient us on these areas, we have a panel of eminent speakers who will share their views and I will introduce them as they speak one by one. Various reports by international organizations, institutions like Morgan Stanley, Standard & Poor's, World Bank, IMF, State Bank of India have forecasted that the Indian economy has undergone a large structural shift in the last 8 to 10 years and is currently the fifth largest economy in the world, overtaking United Kingdom recently. Going ahead, India is expected to be the next fourth largest, tipping Germany in 27, Japan by 29, and becoming the third largest economy by 30 if it goes by the same pace. These projections hinge on the continuation of India's growth, especially due to trade and financial liberalization, labor market reforms, energy transition, as well as investment in India's infrastructure, both physical as well as human. On the other side, the forecasts include a prolonged global recession post-COVID, since India is becoming a trade-dependent economy with nearly 20% of its output exported. The milestone seems to be delayed. Other risk factors include the supply of skilled labor, adverse geopolitical events, and policy errors which may arise from voting in a weaker government. Additionally, we need to achieve the Sustainable Development Goal targets by 2030 for ensuring inclusive development. This year even becomes more important because India has assumed the presidency of G20, which accounts for almost 80% of the world's GDP, 75% of the international trade, and two-thirds of the global population. Therefore, we plan to deliberate on the roadmap for achieving this historical milestone. I would say a repeat because India has been the largest economy in the world in the past. And the sustainable development with a focus on different dimensions of the Indian economy for our better understanding. We shall begin the discussion by focusing on our first theme, which is trade, economic growth and development. and we have seen that there is a clear focus of the Indian government to become a hub for foreign investors as well as manufacturing powerhouse. And the main vehicle for doing so is through boosting manufacturing and exports. It is projected that India's manufacturing share in the GDP will rise from 15.6% of the GDP as of now to 21% by 2031. India's advantages includes abundant low-cost labor, low-cost manufacturing, openness to investment, business-friendly policies, and a young demography with a strong penchant for consumption. In the last few years, there is a clear shift from a welfarist approach to a market-driven approach at the policy level. Now, can India afford to shift the momentum towards trade-led growth? And some other questions. To answer all of that, we have with us our esteemed panelist, Professor N.R. Bhanumurthy sir, who is presently the Vice Chancellor of B.R. Ambedkar School of Economics, University, Bangalore, and he happens to also chair one of the task force of the G20 on trade development and macroeconomics. He is also the former secretary of the Indian Econometric Society and a recipient of a Mahalanobis Medal for Quantitative Research. Formerly, he was with National Institute of Public Finance and Policy, and his research concentrates on macro monetary economics, fiscal policy, international money and finance, macroeconomic modeling, and development economics. He has written over 70 research papers and served on almost 22 government committees. I request Bhanumurthy sir to begin the talk by sharing his thoughts on the topic.
Thank you, Yash. First of all, let me thank St. Xavier's College and the Niti Aayog Chair of Rajasthan University for inviting me to this Indian economy 2030 country. It's always a pleasure to come to Jaipur, and I think after the gap of 2 years, I'm coming to Jaipur now. I'm not new to this college. This is my third time, I think, and all the time I came here, it's very pleasant feeling. And more than that, I just want to tell to students here, we also have a different relationship. Some of our your students have actually joined my university for the PG program, and they have done extremely well. And I think one of the students has done extremely well and is also placed very well in as part of the campus placement. So, so coming to the topic, I'm again glad to be part of this huge panel. Pooja has been tracking me for a long time. And again, youngsters, I want to tell you, there is a nice book Pooja has written, The Lost Decade, not the LAST, LOST Lost Decade, but 2008 to 2018. She has put up all the policies and the impact on those policies on Indian economy. If you want to really understand the Indian economy, the recent Indian economy, the must-read book, and this is personally I'm meeting her after the book. I think I'm only wishing that you will not write two lost decades. so I hope that will happen. And I'm glad to see my ex-colleague Ankush. And thank you so much for this to be part of this panel. I think in terms of talking about 2030, I think it's very important for all of us to understand where we are right now, right? Especially after the COVID-19. I would like to, you can always talk about Indian economy, 50% good, 50% bad and all those things. But I would like to take a 50% good part of it, okay? We can talk about it. There are many negatives happened, but I think we also need to talk about there are many positives that happened despite the kind of system that we have. And one of the things that happened is, yesterday I was reading some newspaper, I think as Mita highlighted, some agency said that India is going to slow down its growth rate to 7%. 7% we are going to slow down. That's what they say. That is the headline. And you have to compare. First of all, as students, you should understand GDP is a statistics, right? GDP is a statistics. I'm sure all of you know the difference between mathematics and statistics. Can somebody tell me what is the difference between mathematics and statistics? Hello? Can somebody tell me what is the difference between mathematics and statistics? Before you ask me questions, I am asking. Okay, so mathematics means it is certain, right? I mean, 1 plus 1 equal to 2, right? Statistics means 1 plus 1 may be 2 or may not be 2. That is what it is. So GDP is also an estimate. It may be true, may not be true, but we think it is true, right? And it's also estimated to come to understand the strength of the economy over a period of time. That is a time series kind of a thing. And at the same time, we want to understand the strength of the economy compared to other countries in the world. That's why we have a GDP estimation, and we have a common methodology right now. So we estimate the GDP. So when we say 7% growth, you have to compare with India's growth in the past, okay? And you also compare India's growth compared to other countries right now. So if you look at other news that is coming up, particularly coming from IMF and World Bank, they are very clearly saying the probability of world economy getting into recession is only increasing day by day. Okay, so you see there is the rest of the world which is trying to enter, which is getting into the recessionary phase, while the Indian economy is talking about growing at 7%. So I think something must have gone right in this country so that we are still growing at 7%, if not 7%, even 6%. Okay, okay, let me bring it down, even if it is 5% compared to the negative growth that's going to happen across the world. So I think something went right. And one of the things that went right in the last couple of years, of course, as I said, there are many things went wrong that I'm not going to talk about. One of the things that went right is that we have not repeated the kind of policies that we have adapted, which is covered in Pooja's book, in the post-global financial crisis. Okay, we have done something very different this time, and that's the reason why we have an inflation less than 6%, and we have a GDP growth of 7%. So I think as students you should know that we have done slightly different this time and slightly better this time. So from here, how are we going to reach the 2030? I think that's the point Yash was trying to raise. And 2030, I mean, it has become a sacrosanct number because there is a SDG goals, SDG 2030. So we always want to think that we need to have a 2030 ambition. And it's also important for India to have this kind of a goal, especially in the absence of any other institution, namely the Planning Commission. And Planning Commission used to give, I'm sure you must be reading in the textbooks, I don't know why you should still read Planning Commission history, but I'm sure in Indian economy still you will be teaching the Planning Commission. So the Planning Commission used to have a 5-year targets, right? The 5-year that you have to achieve 8% or whatnot GDP growth, and at the same time, in fact, the last Planning Commission, the 12th plan, it has actually adopted what was called inclusive growth strategy, where you have a growth and also will have a kind of a policy that will have inclusion aspects, where you can have people coming in or the regions also coming part of the growth process. So we had that kind of policy, but in the absence of Planning Commission, there is no target. And I think now you always have to get all these targets from top. So the top has said that you have to grow at 5 trillion economy, right? And we could not achieve by 24-25. Now we are saying whether it's in 25-26, but we don't know when this happened. But somebody said we'll have a 9 trillion economy by 2030, right? So I think that is the kind of a target that we have. But most importantly, 2030 also talks about the SDG goals, right? Now, how many of us know that where is the Indian SDG goals? So I think that's something I'm sure it will come in the discussion. But I am very pessimistic in terms of achieving the SDG goals because it has a birth defect. Okay, they think that SDG goals should be, there is a private sector that is also equal partner in achieving SDGs. Now, I don't know whether I should comment on this. Private sector for public cause, I think it's a non-starter. Okay, so at least even if it is the CSR funds are now that because CSR become an important issue, there are so many trusts are being opened by the same company to put their own founder's photo and do some activity. So I don't think the private sector funds are going to be going to play any role in the SDGs. So in a sense, 50% of SDGs, in my view, is more of a non-starter. So I think it is the focus should be more by the public sector, the governments. Governments have a larger role, and if you look at the SDGs, it's the targets are very high, and we need a lot of resources for that. There is no option other than government playing a major role. To achieve that, we need to generate more resources, and for that, again, there is a classic debate between Sen and Bhagavati, whether it's a growth comes first or the development comes first. I think we have seen countries after countries where it is important for the government to generate resources, then we need to focus more on the development. So I will also try to say that it's important to balance growth and development, and I think that's exactly what was happened in the COVID period, where the focus was on both, on the cash transfer, providing support to the industries, and also the kind transfer. Okay? You have seen the food supply has been increased and all this. So we have balanced. So I think the kind of growth that we have right now and the kind of policy that we have right now, I think we will be able to balance both growth and development. How much time? 5 minutes. So I think the point I'm trying to say is that um, in fact, 10 days from now, we are going to see the budget. And in my view, it's not going to be a populist budget. It's going to be a business as usual, focusing more on capex strategy so that. So I too believe the causality is actually from the public capital expenditure, growth, and growth to revenue expenditure. Okay, so I think that is the way you should go if you want to have it. What you said, the sustainable growth and development that you were talking about. I think we need to create capacities, you need to create infrastructure, you need to create, you need to have space for activities to expand. I think then only will create more. In fact, my own analysis, just for purpose of I'm sure he's going to comment on me. But if you look at the kind of resources you get in this strategy, what I suggested, is going to be much more than you follow a reverse strategy. Okay? And at the same time, you will have a growth of 8% plus. So fiscal consolidation and growth is possible, and we have done that, and I think it's there in the public domain. So you will get more resources for social sector expenditure if you follow this causality that I suggested. And I think I was finding very difficult to convince in the Delhi circle, but I'm just telling you, now that I'm in Bangalore, I can speak on that. So the second point is, not many people talk about it. SDG 2030, I think it's a big thing. I mean, there are so many indicators. We don't know what are the indicators, what are the parameters that you need to look at. 17 goals and so many other things. I don't want to get into that. But unfortunate part in this country is that there is a lack of data. One thing I would like to highlight here. One of the areas where India has deteriorated, I would like to claim this. One India has deteriorated is in the area of statistics and data. I know Ankush has written a book on this. Okay, so the kind of data that we had in the 50s, 60s, 70s. In fact, India used to be the top player in terms of statistics. Now we don't have even a basic statistics. I don't know how Pooja is going to speak about demography. We don't have population census after 2011. Now I keep arguing that where is this numbers coming from? They say that next year we are going to cross China. So I'm always puzzled when you talk about statistics, and I think we have completely deteriorated in terms of the quality, timely, accuracy, all aspects when it comes to statistics. And I think this is going to be an important, one of the reasons why we have not succeeded in terms of achieving the earlier avatar of SDG, that is MDGs, was the weak statistics that we had, and especially from the ground. And I'm glad when we were talking in Father's office, he was saying that he wants students to go to fields. I think until unless you people don't go to fields, you don't really get feel of it. If you don't go to field, you don't get the feel. I think that's what. So my point is, when it comes to SDGs, it should be at district level focus. Again, Mita has done some work for Rajasthan, and you also involved in that. So I think this data, statistics, is something that needs to be focused more. And there are little more issues. I thought let me bring that. And when it comes to the social sector expenditure for SDGs, now my work is more on public expenditure efficiency. I mean, there is no depth of finances in this country, especially at the state government level. Maybe some people may think that I am in that, but I'll tell you, there's so much of money left in the state governments, but what is lacking is the ideas, projects, and the way you implement. Okay, and the kind of statues or monuments or the kind of advertisements you see from the state government level, it looks like they are taking a shortcut route to spend that money. And everywhere you see that statues are being built. So that shows that what is lacking in the government, especially at the state government and the district level, is that the efficiency levels is actually very low compared to other countries. And I think we need to improve the efficiency levels at the district. And my work particularly right now is more at the district level, because that is the agency, that is the institution where a lot of spending decisions is going to be taken. So the point is, for SDGs, we have enough resources. What is lacking is the institution that will help in improving the efficiencies. In fact, right now at the macro level, we have been highlighted as one of the best countries in the world in terms of digital technology. The DBT kind of a system that we have is being implemented by the central government, but not much by the state governments, but nothing at the district level. So I think the kind of digital technology that's available with us, I think it needs to percolate to all the tiers of the government, so that we will be able to manage our finances and the outcomes better. And the last point is, if at all we want to achieve this, somebody said 9 trillion, but the government is saying it's going to be 10 trillion. So why not more than that? That's a different issue. But I think if at all you want to do all these things, what is important is improving the productivity. Productivity of capital, productivity of land, and productivity of labor. All the factors of production, productivity has to be improved. And nobody is going to argue against if you say that you need to have more investments in health or education and other infrastructure activities, the social infrastructure activities that we say. So I think we need more resources, but for that we need more growth.
Thank you so much, sir, for setting the momentum and explaining to us where we are and what are the challenges in order to achieve that milestone. But yes, as sir has also highlighted, the key thing is that we do have resources and finances, but the implementation part, and especially at the level of the states, is actually a problem. Uh, we'll have some questions later. We'll move on to the next theme, which is climate change and energy future. Why we are just linking it with the development and trade? Because with the development, the environment is the first thing which comes to our mind, because both of them has been on critical fronts with each other. The development economists and the environmental economists. According to the World Economic Forum's Global Risk Report 2020, the top 5 risks over the coming decade, all are climate related, including the human-made environmental disasters, climate action failures, natural disasters, biodiversity loss, and extreme weather. Some experts have said that the imbalance is growing between the development and the environmental sustainability. We have the Joshimat incidents, which is in news recently, and also, if you talk about India, which is committed to its responsibility of reducing the carbon emissions and is working on energy transitions and transformations, is gaining momentum in last few years, and this should not be without compromising the economic growth. Now, is India prepared for ensuring its development needs along with maintaining the climate and the environmental sustainability? We have more of such questions in our minds, and for that we have Dr. Ashwini K. Swain from Center for Policy Research, New Delhi, who's a fellow at CPR, and his research interests include political economy of electricity, interface between energy service needs and climate mitigation goals, and the water energy food nexus, especially in the Indian context. He has his PhD in politics from the University of York and his MPhil in MA in political science from Jawaharlal Nehru University, New Delhi. I request Dr. Sain to shed more light on this.
Thank you, yes, and good afternoon, everyone. And thank you very much, St. Xavier's College and Niti Aayog Chair to invite me here. And thank you, yes, for this generous introduction. So, as you pointed out, I'm probably the only student of politics over here. Everybody else is an economist. But as a political science student, I can tell a little bit about economy and reflect on about the decade to 2030. So I'll try to talk to the topic you suggested, but I'm going to, given the theme of this conclave, I'm going to touch upon everything a little bit. So if we look from climate perspective, now there is a global consensus, including public is understanding climate change is one of the biggest threats we are facing. And there are two ways to deal with it. So we try to reduce those climate impacts by reducing global warming. And the other is, despite those efforts, we'll still have some impact. And those impacts we have to adapt to. So, particularly when I come from the energy perspective, so we talk more about mitigation. How do you reduce global warming? And as you rightly pointed out, so it's about reducing carbon emissions. And when we think about that, energy is the dominant sector. So we live in a world where our energy sector is mostly around hydrocarbons or fossils. So we consume largely coal, petroleum products, and gas. So that drives our energy system, not just in India, but globally as well. So, when there's a global call for action to mitigate climate change, again, energy transition dominates as the key action for the community. So there, what is happening? There are three-step process happening. One, we are electrifying more and more. So every kind of energy use is being electrified. So instead of using coal directly or petroleum products directly, so there's an urge to electrify more. Second aspect is about end use efficiency. Wherever we are using energy, reduce the amount of energy consumption for that specific output or productivity. And third is about decarbonizing the electricity itself. So which is the shift from thermal power plants towards renewable energy plants. So solar, wind, hydro, those kind of things. So, and in that context, India has emerged as a frontrunner in the global climate action with ambitious targets for that. So, we have a global place as part of the climate negotiations where India has committed to put up 50% of electricity generation capacity from non-fossil sources by 2030. So 2030 is a milestone in many ways. And in terms of long term, India has pledged to achieve net zero emissions by 2070. When we say net zero, it's not necessarily we reduce emissions completely, but we try ways to abate those emissions. So, which could be forestation, other options, carbon capture and storage. So, there are technological options and natural options to that. So, India's global place in terms of energy transition is 50% non-fossil capacity by 2030. But at domestic level, within the country, we have much more aggressive targets, which includes 500 gigawatt of non-fossil capacity. Right now, we are somewhere around 180 gigawatt or so. So then we are saying out of that 500 gigawatt, 450 gigawatt of will be renewable energy, modern renewable energy, which is like solar, hydro, solar and small hydro, wind, those kind of options, not like large hydro. So in addition to that, we also have a renewable purchase obligation on our utilities, which sets the target at 43% for 2030. So if I look at all these targets and try to, these are different numbers. If we try to see through this, by 2030, probably we will be consuming 40 to 45% of our electricity from cleaner sources. So that's one aspect. And the other aspect is over this decade, so for most of the developed countries, they have already peaked their energy consumption. As Professor Bharumati pointed out, we are a much growing economy. So with economic growth, it doesn't happen in vacuum. We need processes, industrial processes, infrastructure as pointed out. And for all that, we need energy consumption. So that energy consumption has been multiplying in India. I mean, over the last 2 decades, we have increased almost threefold energy demand. And as various estimates are projected, provided statistics, so over next 2 decades, we are going to quadruple our energy consumption. So by 2030, India's electricity consumption is going to double from what it was in 2020. So in that context, the government has launched multiple schemes, policies, and there are several missions like there was a national hydrogen mission announced recently. There are production-linked incentives to manufacturing for electric vehicles. So there are several things happening. So, and why should we? I mean, these are all good things, but then there are two aspects to it. So why should we care from an economy perspective? So the way I see with this transition from hydrocarbons to cleaner sources, the energy foundation of our economy and politics is going to shift completely. And what it means. So I'm going to point out few aspects of it. I mean, it's like an onion. So you keep moving layers. So there are more and more layers. But I'm going to point out some aspects which are relevant to the theme itself. So we all, I mean, almost everybody sitting in this room, we are used to electricity at household level. So if I look at what is the impact of this, if we look at household level. So we'll be consumed, right now we are using electricity for lighting, for cooling and heating, and for some few other appliances. But soon that's going to change. We are going to use electricity for cooking, we are going to use electricity for our cars. So we'll be using more and more electricity. So if we look from economy perspective, right now average citizens pay, average households pay about 2 to 4% of their income as electricity bill. So that will change. I mean, as we consume more electricity, that may bring down our total energy bill. I mean, we may not be needing LPG gas for cooking, or we may not be buying petrol, diesel for our vehicles, but electricity will become a bigger part of our expenditure and a dominant commodity for consumption. So, which may, I mean, as I said, it will work out for some households well, but it may not work out for all that well. And if you look at states, I mean, as in governments, so we have an economic system around the fossil fuel, particularly, be it petroleum, be it coal, be it gas. there's significant public finance linkage to that. So just to put in perspective, the total tax revenue collected from petroleum products and coal contributes to 13% of direct income at state level and 20% of tax revenue at the central level. So as these consumptions go down, we are going to lose this public finance. And that means the governments will have less and less money to spend on welfare and infrastructure. So how do we compensate that money? So what kind of mechanism we have to think about? Then look, that's where the market side. So far, India's energy system has been largely public in nature. So when the country got independent, in fact, as students of economics, you must have heard about Bombay Plan, which came out in 1944. So as part of that plan, India's industrialists sort of urged the state to take up the provision of electricity. So that's how we got a public electricity system in India. So that's going to change significantly. We are already 50% of our generation capacity is owned by private sector. So that's going to shift rapidly. And we'll have more and more private investment, private sector owned energy infrastructure. And that means the role between state will reduce to more regulatory functions where they set standards but won't have any control over price or quality. They may set standards for quality of service but not on price and kind of issues. So that's one important aspect. Then related to that, because its state has been largely state run, we have gigantic structures around energy infrastructure, big companies, big power plants. So that's going to change, and that is also facilitated by the technology. So now with solar and other renewable energies, we don't need to set up a multi-gigawatt power plant. We can put up a 1 kilowatt solar rooftop on our household. So that's going to change the structure of this sector as a whole. So I wanted to touch upon a couple of points from the sustainable development perspective, and which was brought up earlier also. So this is also going to affect regional diversity in the country. Our primary fuel, which is coal, is concentrated in 5 to 7 states in India. And but despite this ownership and reserve of coal in these 5 states, they are the poorest states of India in terms of economic performance. And if we look at the trajectory of RE growth in India, it's coming up in another 5 states who are not these 5 states. So in this transition, so how this special inequity between states going to be addressed? That's going to have serious consequences. So the inequity between individuals, households is not just widening; it's also widening between the states and regions. So that's an important thing we have to look at. And similarly, jobs and livelihood. So as we shift from one industry to another industry, there's significant disruption in jobs and livelihood market also. So the coal miners in eastern India or central India will lose their jobs, but new jobs will be coming up somewhere else. So for example, one thing we can see remote in our near is the electric vehicles. As we shift to electric vehicles, they require much less maintenance. So the mechanics who are dependent on electric vehicles, they will lose their livelihood. So once we switch from petrol pump to electric charging stations are infrastructures. You don't need humans there. Petrol pumps employ 20 people in a big petrol pump. So that is changing. But this is not all pessimistic there. So there is a positive side to this. It comes with an opportunity for new kind of industrialization. As a country, we are sort of late industrializing country, and I don't want to say that to economists here, but we have this opportunity to leverage the new technology and sort of get into a green industrial policy around big technologies. So which is, the government is trying to do with multiple missions and production linked incentives and various other avenues. But we need a clear strategy around that, which can push for more industrialization riding on the transition. And there we really have to balance between the rural and urban side of it. And the last point I wanted to bring in, talking about the sub-theme, sustainable development goals. Electricity, energy access is one of the sustainable development goals, SDG 7. So India has declared uh, near universal access to electricity, which is far from the truth. So access is not about, this is access to the grid. This is not access to real electricity. Energy access without supply, with supply quality disruptions as good. When you cannot predict, when you cannot rely on the supply, that's not enough for any productive use. So given that we have a long way to go, and as students of economics, you can contribute significantly to this. I'll stop here and respond.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for taking to a different dimension and actually explaining to us that how energy inequality also can be a big challenge for us, and with the changing dynamics moving towards renewable sources and how this is going to impact the economy is also something which we have to think about while we move towards 2030. Moving next to our next third theme, which is I think most relevant for all of us who are sitting in this hall, demography and employability, which is actually something we have been talking about since last so many years, and it has been projected that as India's decade, this one, as we have a very young workforce, which will be driving the economic growth for us for the next few years. As far as the data is concerned, we have almost 45% of India's population which is below 25 years of average age, and this youth segment makes the country the largest consumption market, driving on the demographic dividend with an average population of 28 years, on the verge of becoming the most populous nation by the UN report that we will be crossing China this year. And there is an increasing trend in the labor force participation also, which is going to be increasing until 2040. On the contrary, we have, I think, a few days back, we have an ASA report which has highlighted that the basic reading ability of children in age group of 5 to 16 years old enrolled in both the government and the private schools in the country has gone down, and even gone down from the pre-COVID levels. Post-COVID, we have seen an increasing trend in the unemployment rates in various states, and Rajasthan happens to be one of the states which has a very high unemployment rate, especially in the informal sector. Now, in this context, are we ready to reap this demographic dividend which we have been talking about, or this population bulge will become a burden for the economy? To talk about more on this, we have Ms. Pooja Mehra, who's the consulting editor, the Mint, to deliberate on this. She is an economics journalist who covers the developments concerning the Indian economy, and as Bhanumurthy sir also highlighted, she has written a bestseller, The Lost Decade, which has been highlighting India's growth story devolved into growth without a story. She is the recipient of the Ramnath Goenka Excellence in Journalism Award for 2 years consecutively in 8 and 9. She has been a senior deputy editor at The Hindu and also writes for Livelihood. She is also an alumnus of the Delhi School of Economics, Delhi University. I request ma'am to please take us on that theme.
Thank you, Dr. Harshvardhan. Thank you so much for those very kind words. Thank you to Xavier's College. Thank you to Professor Mathur for inviting me here. It's so exciting always to be among students and to recall how just my own college days and how exciting that life is, and how what we learn then, what we observe and see then, and then 20, 25 years later, how you see things changing from there. To share my own experience on that, when I was a student in school and after that in college, India's 1991 reforms were being undertaken and were being debated. And there used to be a lot of such college debates, and you'd be surprised to know how often I was asked by my teachers to debate against the reforms. And I've said all those things that we used to read in newspapers, and I've said all those things that we don't need potato chips, we need microchips, and all these reforms are no good. And how I think within 2 years of started working, I completely got rid of all of those ideas and completely changed seeing real life. And although the lost decade is being talked about, the lost decade is not a pessimistic view of India or India's economy. Before the reforms, before 2014, India used to grow at 3%, 4%, 5%. Actually, during the period that I cover in the book, India's economy grew consistently at 9% for the first half, which is probably the best Indian economic performance post-independence. And even the worst year in the book, in the period covered in the book, is better than the pre-COVID GDP growth of 4% we had in 2019. Which takes me. So I'd like to say two things. One about the lost decade, which is that the reason I thought it was a lost decade is because of the various things that Dr. Ashwini and Professor Bhanumurthy have also touched upon, which is how we have institutional weaknesses, how we have policy errors, which Dr. Harshvardhan also spoke about, how, Dr. Angelo spoke about, is all of India doing well or part of India doing well? I think all of that, seeing all of that, is what I felt that it was lost decade because we could so much better. We could have done so much better. We had so much going for us. And because of a few errors of policy, we sort of did not get to where we were heading, and we had to go this way. And we continue to be on that way. But now I begin to see a few things which give me more optimism. It was said that everything about India is 50%, 50%. What you say is good, you can equally make the argument that it's not that good, that India is the country of the largest number of graduates, but India is also the country of the largest number of people who have not had the fortune of good education. And the same thing I think applies also, in my view, to all the things that give me optimism about India right now. When I was debating in college against the reforms, I had never thought that a day would come when I would be standing in, I don't know what's the equivalent of it in Jaipur, which by the way is one of my favorite cities, so thank you for calling me to Jaipur. We have in Delhi what is called the Mother Dairy. I don't know what is the equivalent here. SARS, yeah. So when I stand in queue there to buy milk, the person in front of me or behind me is a laborer who has, through the day, done construction labor. He and I stand in the queue to buy the same product, and I'm paying with cash, and he's paying with Google Pay. Not only are we both buying milk, he's paying with, he's making a digital transaction, and I'm paying with cash, and nothing gladdens my heart more than that. And this is something I would not have imagined when I was in college. So the point that I'm trying to make is that there is a lot going for India, and when we talk about 5 trillion or 7% rate of growth, I think part of it is because the have-nots that we spoke about, they really don't have a choice. They cannot be anything other than resilient because they wouldn't have food to eat. They wouldn't know where their next meal is going to come from. And when I say that it's a lost decade, it's because that is what is bringing us where we are today for a large proportion of this country. Is this person, it is this section of society's inability, not inability, but lack of choice than to be resilient. So I felt that we needed to fix our policy and institutions, etc., a lot more than we have, and that's where we failed. And like Professor Banamurthy said, I thought another thing that makes me feel very good is that the part covered in my book. I don't know if you all recall, you would have been very young. There was this period where India was supposed to be a fragile five economy, because we made those policy mistakes, but then we learned from those policy mistakes. And like Professor Banamurthy said, this time when the world is going through a macroeconomic crisis, India has not made the same mistakes. So we are not a fragile five economy. We are one of the stronger responses economies in the world right now, and that is a positive. But does that mean that everything is going fine? Can we not do better? Are we doing our best? Those are the questions that I think about, and that's what brings me to the question that you've given to me, which is of the demographic dividend. And as you said, is most relevant for all of us, all of the students, especially today, because either you're going to be in the job market or you're going to be somebody who's going to be giving jobs to people, just a few years from now. And not only is it important for India's growth and India's development, the question of whether you're going to have a job or you're going to be able to have the ability to give people jobs, but also the people that you're going to look at, are they going to be employable? Will they have the skills that you need? Because when I try to look for people to hire on my team, I am facing, despite this huge unemployment problem in this country, I face a lot of problem finding the right people to hire. And we have vacancies, for months at end, which we are not able to fill up because the skills are just not there. So there is a mismatch that needs to be addressed, which is again an institutional and educational policy, a capacity building sort of an issue, which I think is just persisting now for almost 15, 20 years. Something is obviously not right. Why we are not able to fix this? So just to say about what it is when we talk about demographic dividend, which I'm sure everybody, all the students here understand. What that means is that for a considerable period, and the UN says that up to 2050, India will have, as a proportion of the population, the number of people who are going to be in their earning ages. That age group will exceed the number of people who will be in the age group where you become a dependent, you're not earning. And when any country is in that kind of a demographic phase, that becomes an advantage, because if more number of people are earning than people dependent on those earnings, then you're obviously going to grow more. Now, traditionally, this has been very easy for countries where their labor just leaves agriculture and begins to join factories and work there. China has shown how this is done. But for India, it's not going to be that easy. Like Professor Ashwini also said, that when you're making an electric car, when you're the new age manufacturing, when you're doing the new age manufacturing, the kind of skills required are going to be very different. It's very easy for you to learn how to become a mechanic and change tires and earn some basic income. But when the market changes, the kind of jobs are not going to be these kind of jobs. You're going to have to be able to do a far more high skill job on an electric. This is just one example on an electric vehicle. The kind of jobs and the number of jobs are going to change. And therefore, the education system, the skilling system, all of that is going to have to change. And I think that, we are beginning to see, like I said, in my own personal experience, we are beginning to see all of that already. Technological change is going to be one major force which is going to make this even more challenging for India. And this isn't just about, often this discussion gets into the question of whether we have the money to spend on education and skills or not from government spending. it isn't just about spending. Like Professor Bhanamurthy said, there is a lot of money sometimes sitting there waiting to be spent. It's just that we don't have the ideas, we don't have the capacity, we don't know what to do with that money, to turn that money into something which will create the system that we need for both creating jobs as well as creating employable people. Um, Finally, I also wanted to talk about this is unrelated, but since it was mentioned, yes, Professor Bhanamurthy data. And I have to say this that I am also a student of Professor Bhanamurthy. How often I call him, and he's always very generous at this time. When I want to learn something, if I have a doubt to clear, what does this estimate mean? What does that macroeconomics mean? Um, and what bothers me, this relates to the point on institutions, is that he talks about lack of data. We write about lack of data. We've not had a poverty line estimated for I don't know how many years now, 15 years. Our GDP estimation is outdated by 11 years. We've not rebased the series. And all of this clamor for good data, updated data, or the deterioration in the data quality is coming from him, is coming from me, but is somehow not coming from the policymakers. Whereas they are the ones who are most affected by it. And that, I think, is again a telling thing about how policy and institutional weaknesses is one of the big stumbling blocks. Is one of, it's like, yes, India can become 5 trillion, India can grow 7%, 8%, but our legs are tied. We have to sort of free up our legs, and then we'll be able to do it. Sorry, my sequence has gone a bit haywire. Why is it important? Why is the question of demographics important? The question of demographics is important because it's only when people have jobs, when they earn, that is when they will consume. We keep talking about India being a very big market because there are a lot of population is large. We talk about consumption-led growth, but you can only spend well when you earn well. If you don't earn well, you're not going to be able to spend well. And labor force participation, because people are not managing to get jobs, partly because they're not skilled, partly because our manufacturing is not creating as many jobs as required. And Dr. Harshvardhan, you spoke about the manufacturing data, manufacturing as a percentage of GDP. It has been stagnant, in fact, I think shrinking. I remember in 2010, I think the goal was to make it 25% of GDP by 2020, I think, and that has of course not happened. And for all the different kinds of policies that we have tried, we want to invite Apple to come and shift from China to India. We want to do the public link, which is basically a subsidy we are giving to companies. We are doing so many things, but that number is not improving. Our manufacturing crisis, we are not able to resolve, and therefore we are not able to create jobs. I think, of course, it relates back to policy matters, but I think what that has done is that, we are seeing this in the labor force participation rates, people are getting disillusioned. They are not looking for jobs anymore. People are just saying that, I'm not going to get a job, so I'm not even going to start looking for a job. And therefore, we are seeing underemployment. Because I cannot go hungry, I'll starve to death. Therefore, what I'm doing is I'm just doing, going to the farm, going back from the city to the farm, to the village, and going and working on the farms. And where the farms need 5 people, 15 people are working on the farms. And they are all looking like they're employed, but they're actually not. They're not contributing to GDP in a way they could have. And that, is lost GDP. It may not be a lost decade, but that is lost GDP. And I think, again, the data needs to be refined, and all of those things need to be looked at, and we need to get into these questions now. It's been really long that we haven't. When you see that, there is a free food scheme which is very expensive. A lot of taxpayer money goes into it, but there is just an inability to bring it to an end. You have to keep extending it. When you see that so many years, 10 years after it was introduced, the scheme of NREGA, which is a different discussion, um, in every year there is more and more number of people are lining up to work for this scheme. And what is the scheme? The scheme is where you have to in the sun do hard manual labor, break stones for 10 hours, and then they give you, such a small amount of money. What does that tell you? It just tells you about the jobs crisis. It just tells you about the unemployability crisis, and both go hand in hand. When the finance minister says that I've given companies what they asked, I gave you a corporate tax rate cut. We are spending money on capital expenditure and building infrastructure. We are doing this, we are doing that, and yet private investment is not picking up. What does that tell you? That tells you that something is not right. Something needs to be addressed, and that is not getting addressed, and therefore the question, I think, needs to be revisited from scratch on why is this happening the way it is. And I think we in India sort of get very, there is a mismatch between what we want to do and what we end up doing. If we want to create jobs for the large number of people where they have very low skills, where they're not educated, we cannot be putting all our energy into inviting Apple to come and start manufacturing in India, because Apple is not a labor-intensive manufacturing company. Apple cannot create so many jobs, the kind of jobs that we need. And the other thing is that we sometimes, there is this whole conversation that goes on about how India's small scale units will create jobs. I'm not sure how it sounds very nice and we want to encourage small entrepreneurs, but I think what we need is large factories which can employ a large number of people with very low skills, and I don't see any policies for that. Apple is not going to be able to do in India what it is doing in China, because India does not have that kind of ecosystem that China offers to Apple. And for all the conversation we hear about, China leaving, Apple leaving China, I don't think that's going to happen. And I think just yesterday a JP Morgan estimate has come which says that China is going to be Apple is going to be increasing their intensity of their operations in China, even if they make more iPhones in India, and so for all the conversation that we do and for all the efforts that we put, I think we should ask, are we getting the desired results? And if we are not, then we should ask, did we even think this through? Did we aim for the right objectives, or was there a mismatch? And lastly, a point I forgot to mention earlier, which is again on data. I don't know, Professor Bhanumurthy, if you saw that. I think our data estimates, statistics crisis has come to such a level that there is a union territory that has put out an e-tender for GDP estimate, for their state GDP estimation. So I am very optimistic. When I see the people of this country and all that they're trying to do, I'm very optimistic when I see the policy lessons we learned, after the global financial crisis, and we didn't make those mistakes again. I'm very optimistic when I see, how tax collections are increasing because, we are using technology to reduce tax leaking out. But there are also a whole lot of things where we need to get our act together. And when we do all of that, yes, we are going to be 5 trillion, 10 trillion, and we are going to be in a much better position than where we are today.
Thank you so much, ma'am. As you rightly pointed out, this employability challenge is obviously going to be a big problem for us. And we have been talking about NEP coming and solving the problem, but other day I was talking to Sir, and he said it's not that suddenly NDP is going to revamp everything. It will take its own 10-15 years, but this is a big problem for us. That are we able to get the right job for the right kind of people we are educating in the country? So this is going to be a big issue, which we have to discuss further. Moving to the last theme, which is health and human development, which has become even more important post-COVID. We have seen that health infrastructure for us is a big issue. And it has been seen that health is basically central to the well-being and progress of the nation. An employment generator, a productivity enhancer, and a driver of innovation and entrepreneurship. The COVID-19 pandemic has been a testing period for all the countries, including India, in terms of the adequacy of the health infrastructure. India spends roughly 6% of its GDP, including the public and private spending, and it has been projected that by 2064, India will have the highest ever population of 169 crores in the world. Meeting the human development needs of the population is obviously a very challenging task, and India has not been satisfactorily performing on that front, even if we consider the sustainable development goals of healthy lives and promoting well-being. In terms of the Human Development Index, India has shown definite improvement, but again, as we have been discussing, are we able to work around our potential in terms of the improvement in health? To discuss more on that, we have with us Dr. Ankush Agarwal, who is presently working with IIT Delhi. Previously, he was with the Institute of Economic Growth, Delhi, where he was working on the forecasting of agricultural output and health. He's an engineer by training and studied economics for his PhD, where he completed at Indira Gandhi Institute of Development Research, Bombay. His work research areas are health economics and demography, human development, agricultural economics, and economics of education. I request Ankush sir to please take over and enlighten us on this theme.
लाइटर थोड़ी है, इससे नहीं होगा। लाइटर यार आपने पहले कर रखा है। शुरू तो करवाओ, मैंने मंगवा
Okay.
ये बताया नहीं।
Okay, great. First of all, thank you very much for having me here. I am very glad to be amongst you and in this galaxy of speakers. So, Father was mentioning that we'll have college students as well as students from school. So, very glad to be amongst you. Now, as far as this particular topic is concerned, there could not have been a better context set than by the three initial introducers. Father Dr. Aayog Swami mentioned about, what we economists usually refer to as civic returns to education. And then Reverend Father Dr. Angelo also talked about reaching, how can education reach our masses. Professor Niti Mathur mentioned about or talked about inclusive growth, and also all my three previous speakers. Next slide. Yeah, so basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about human development, education and health, and briefly touch about whether, what are the kind of agenda that we should focus for 2030, not always in quantitative terms. But this has become more important, all the more important because of this goal which has been set that we want to be a developed country by 2047. So 2030 is important for various reasons, including SDGs, but also because of that reason. So we all know about importance of human development. In fact, both of them started by saying, started by this argument of John Raz and Ahmad Sen. These are ends in themselves. At the macro level, these also aid economic growth. Professor Bhanumurthy also touched about it. And at micro level, this is very crucial for individual well-being. And UNDP 2010, I think yes, we mentioned about it in his very brief introduction to this talk. UNDP talks about the fact that people are the real wealth of nations. So we are growing, we are developing for whom? Development for whom? See, for people, it's for various creatures of the nature, various entities of the nature, including human beings. So this report also talked about putting people at the center of development. Now, when we talk about human development, we measure it using using the Human Development Index conventionally, which is a combined index based on income, education, and health. So I will only touch upon education and health. Now, the current status is 130. So this is India's rank in terms of human development achievements. 130 out of 190 odd countries, and India belongs to the group of medium human development achievers. Now, what could be potential target for India in terms of 2030? Where do we want ourselves to be in terms of HDI or our ranking? So we can. One thing is we can go by our past achievements. How far we have been. So this shows the progress since 1990. Now we were actually in the group of lower HDI few years back, quite a few years back, and then we moved to middle HDI, and therefore one can expect that by 2030, which could be a reasonable sort of target, that we can target ourselves to be among higher sort of, among the middle HDI countries at the higher sort of category. Next. But this is a key area of concern as far as human development is concerned. So this is an aggregate indicator which tells you about the level, but inequalities. And here, the lost decade that she was talking about actually comes into the picture. So if you look at these graphs, these actually show you the distribution of human development index, and here three dimensions in terms of income, education, and health, and also how much achievement in HDI or human development are we losing because of prevailing inequalities. And what these depict essentially is that the loss, most of this loss is in terms of education and health. That is one dimension of lost decade as well. Now I move on to schooling. So these are certain achievements. So Professor Bhanmurthy was also saying, we have, and I probably agree with him, that, as far as India's growth story is concerned, there are many achievements here. So here also you see certain achievements. There is a success in increasing enrollment ratio and literacy, and to some extent improvement in gender parity and inclusion of socially disadvantaged groups. There is improvement in SS, and all this is because of schemes such as midday meal, Sarv Shiksha Abhiyan, and RT. All these have helped a bit in improving these. But there are also areas of concern, gray areas. So which are specifically in terms of higher education. So Father was mentioning about massification of education. So we have focused quite a bit on elementary education, but now we should focus on higher education as well, and more specifically on quality of higher education. So there are studies by several World Bank economists. So they ask this question: where has all our education gone? In terms of if you try to quantify learning outcomes, this is better depicted in the next slide. So this shows percentage of children in standard 5 who could read class 2 level text. So based on a study by Karthik Muralidharan, and this is a dismal story here. So 40%, and the worrying area here is that this is decline trend. So only 40% students who are studying in class 5 are actually able to read the text that a class 2nd student should be able to. And this is happening despite investment. Investment is increasing. And similarly here, so another sort of dimension of lost decade. So those who are enrolled in grade 6, 7, 8, 9, and you can see how many of them are able to solve mathematics problem. Okay, so most of them are not able to solve mathematics related issues or mathematics related problems beyond class 4, even though they are enrolled in class 8, 9, 10. Next, please. Inequality already has been talked about. Next. Okay, so this was another sort of topic which my previous two speakers also touched upon. Uh, 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 essentially, our education sector is supplying a different set of skills to students, and job market is demanding a different set of skills. So 25 years back, in uh, Infosys used to approach IIT and they used to recruit ceramic engineers. And when we ask them why are you recruiting ceramic engineers, they say we trust IIT brand. We will just give them in-house kind of training for 6 months and they will be ready as IT engineers. Now, what this depicts is there is a cross mismatch between what the education sector is supplying and what the job market is demanding. So overall degree of match is around 2/3. In fact, father was discussing this point when we were sitting in his office when we arrived. Next. Now, what are achievements in terms of health? There are improvements in life expectancy, and there is some success in reducing the gap between male and female life expectancy. So, this gender gap or gender disparity in health is notorious in India and also some South Asian countries. But we have had some success in bridging this gap as far as life expectancy is concerned. There are improvements in terms of mortality and also healthcare infrastructure has improved. Next. But there are also areas of concern. We are transitioning economy, so there are several transitions that have been happening. So on the health front, epidemiological transition, which is double burden of diseases. So we have, so for instance, diseases of poverty as well as diseases of affluence. So increasingly, lot of our disease burden is coming from, diseases like diseases related to heart, diabetes, etc. And also nutrition transition. So you will have a prevalence of obesity as well as undernutrition at the same time, which poses its own challenge. How to deal with it. These devices are of course coterminous with income levels and rather poor progress on child health and nutrition. So if we look at our child health outcomes, these are not substantially better than those in sub-Saharan African countries, and given the income level in India is higher compared to those countries, so this has been referred to as Asian enigma in the literature. Then there are other emerging issues which could be a cause of concern in the near future, which should also be kept in mind as we think about 2030, which is care of elderly population. So we are hoping to reap the demographic dividend, but soon we should also be prepared to tackle this challenge. And also climate change induced risk. So, Swami actually touched upon some effects of climate change, but there are health related effects of climate change and also private care. So, a lot of our expenditure is out of pocket from by the people. So, that is a challenge. Uh, so Professor Bhanmurthy already sort of mentioned that, he mentioned it in a macro context, but I will agree with him. And this is also true in case of health and education. So a lot of our spending is of revenue kind of nature. So very less capital kind of spending that could fetch us some return in the future. So this is one sort of concern. Next. And then there are issues related to, in case of health, particularly over medication. So increasingly there are studies which are pointing out that health insurance is actually leading to overconsumption of medical services. And this is in most cases supply induced demand. So if you have health insurance, then only they will cater to you. And because you have health insurance, they will exhaust the entire sort of your insurance budget, even if it may not be needed for your illness. Uh, Next. So SDGs, I am equally pessimistic as Professor Bhanumurthy about the achievement of SDGs. We are very unlikely to achieve the sustainable development goals, and also it seems like a joke to me, as he also very rightly pointed out, because of data deficiencies that we have chosen, or the UN has chosen 170 target indicators. So you look at, India and its neighboring countries. How many of SAARC nations have been able to conduct a census in last 20-30 years? It is supposed to be a periodic exercise, but you will get the answer on your own. And similarly for sub-Saharan countries, we simply do not have data to monitor these 170 indicators. And moreover, most of these indicators will exhibit a good correlation with income. Next, uh, now this is the picture about MDGs. India did well in case of HIV. So I'm only talking about education and health related MDGs. But in case of all other MDGs, the progress by the government report, which is country report 2015, was termed as rather slow. Next. Okay, so this is another area. Both of them, Pooja ji and Professor Bhanumurthy spoke about it, data deficit. And this is a real area of concern. And this is something that we must think about as we again think about 2050. So there are measurement issues. He very aptly pointed out the difference between statistics and mathematics. Same goes for health outcomes and educational outcomes. And there are other issues with measuring health, such as health is inherently a poorly defined concept. It could mean differently to different people. uh, uh, Next, then there are also political economy kind of issues with surveys. For instance, when India conducted the Pokhran tests in 1998, NFHS 2 got delayed by at least 1 year because the requisite funding from USAID, which was funding the NFHS, did not come. They imposed sanctions on India. Subsequently, because the then government had certain targets in terms of child nutrition in mind, NFHS 4 was halted by, it is again supposed to be every 5 yearly exercise, but it was conducted 10 or 15 years later. So these kind of political economy issues are also there. Next, uh, okay, so another thing is like we may have made some progress had there no had this COVID-19 not been there. COVID-19 has definitely halted progress toward SDGs with regard to education and health, at least in developing countries. And so a lot of things I have mentioned, and I also must qualify myself like them that I am not portraying a dismal picture here. And we should also realize that ours is a highly heterogeneous country, and it is not easy to overcome so many challenges. Uh, uh, Next, thank you very much for having me here.
Thank you, sir, for taking us through the data-driven presentation where what is our stand and how we are doing in terms of the education and health. And definitely, we have seen with other panelists also that situation is, it's something which is very, very important for us to understand that we are at a very crucial juncture. And if we are not able to take some very immediate corrective measures, I think that 2030 is just a number, but we will not be able to reach to that level where we are able to provide all basic facilities, at least education and health, to our growing population, and it will be a big burden on us. Now, we have paucity of time. I'll open the house first for the house if there is any questions from the audience for the panelists. Otherwise, I will have some one or two questions which I can ask and they can all respond to it. If there is any question from the audience, we can take it up. One or two questions. Yeah. Just mention your name and for what speaker you are asking, on what topic.
Good afternoon, panel. So, my first question is from Ms. Pooja. Ma'am, you pointed out that there is a mismatch of skills, and you yourself were looking for some candidates, but you didn't find the suitable one. So, what are the skills that you suggest as students, as job seekers, future job seekers? We want to work on those kind of skills first.
I'll take one or two together and then we can. Any other question for Pooja ma'am on then we can club those questions, she can respond. Any other question on demography which we'll club those questions?
Ma'am, I think we are all aware that service sector contributes the most to our economy and we lack in manufacturing sector. So do you think the plan proposed by the government of India is enough to reach our goals when it comes to the manufacturing sector?
Thank you, both very good questions. What are the skills that I need for candidates that I'm looking to hire? Or what are the skills that Infosys needs for, as Dr. Agarwal said, when they want to hire? Are they going to have to do the job that ideally IIT should have done and produced hireable, employable engineers? I think, this is how markets work. I mean, students should, in college, should know what it is that they are wanting to be. So, to take my own example, when I was studying economics in Delhi School of Economics, I had never imagined I'd be a journalist. It was the year 2000, and there was a severe shortage of jobs, and the placement cell in my college, Delhi School of Economics, had a rule. And we were only a batch of 30 students in the second year. Everybody else had either dropped out or not cleared the exam. And the rule was that, if you get a job and you say no to it, if you get an offer and you say no to it, you'll have to wait for the entire batch to be placed, and only then you can sit for your next interview. And that's how I landed up in a job in journalism. So what I'm trying to say here is that, the market is so dysfunctional that how it should be is that, if I want to be a software engineer, then I should study software engineering, and my college should teach me everything that I need to know so that I can on day one begin to join Infosys and deliver. It should not be that Infosys is hiring people with some other training and then spending 6 months training them, or Business Standard, my first job, a business newspaper is hiring somebody who had never heard the word journalism, and training them how to be a journalist. And thank God they did that, because I enjoy my job and I've stayed on here, but it may not always happen like that. On services versus manufacturing, I think services is pretty much coming up on its own. Thank God there are no policies interfering with the growing services sector, but manufacturing depends a lot on what government does, whether you have infrastructure or not, whether you get reliable electricity supply or not. Like Professor Nita was saying, whether you have employable people out there or not. What is your trade policy? If you need to import some inputs, how expensive they are made by imposition of import duty. There are so many things that go into ensuring that something can be produced, can be manufactured in a way where you're going to be able to compete with the rest of the world. There are hundreds of things, and obviously those hundreds of things are not going right, and which is why India is not doing well on the manufacturing sector. Although we put so much energy into almost every second day coming up with a new policy, none of those policies are working, which just tells us that those policies are not well thought out. Services sector is doing better because services is relatively less dependent, I think, on the policy ecosystem.
Thank you, ma'am. Any other question from the audience for any of the panelists?
Good afternoon, sir. My question is for Ankur, sir. Sir, as we have heard that we are the fastest growing economy and the GDP rates are also increasing, sir, still we are performing very poor in the health report, the global health report. Don't you think it's a bit contradictory?
So generally, if you look at globally, there is a positive sort of relation between these two. But there are country-specific cases like Sri Lanka, where you have lower level of income and very high level of attainments in terms of health. Now, India's case is slightly opposite to Sri Lanka, where we have reasonably we are reasonably well off in terms of economy, but are not that well off in terms of health. Now, partly the answer lies in history. If you look at the health outcomes historically and the investment that has been taken place in healthcare, it has been very low. So WHO has benchmarked a certain amount of GDP that should be invested to health, but as you know, being a developing country, we are constrained. We have lot of other financing issues, so it's not always possible to invest that much amount. But that is one of the reasons. Historically, our health outcomes have been very poor. With regard to this child health, it's a vicious cycle. Mothers' outcomes are poor, which in turn leads to poorer child health outcomes, and it's passed on to generations. So that vicious cycle needs to be.
All right. Thank you, sir. So I think we have very much shortage of time, and we have to wrap up the session also. So I'll have a closing remark from all the speakers. I'll have one question which also I'll throw, and they can have a concluding remark. I'll start with Bhanumurthy sir. Sir, we know that India has been growing in terms of economic growth, and now the onus is towards trade-led growth, and we are also focusing on the exports. So, do you think that shifting towards that trade-led growth, because till now we were service-led economy, contributing almost more than 50%. So, do you think that this change at this point in time is going to be sustainable for us in the long term, keeping the other aspects together?
I think it's a very important question. The reason why we are expected to grow at 7%, currently at 6%, is because of the absence of exports. So exports, if you look at the empirics, exports is largely a function of external demand. Now, whenever there is an external demand, I think we will export much better. So as we are expecting a recession right now, so that's the reason we are saying that export growth will be less or maybe negative also. Having said that, ultimately, in fact, exports consist of both goods and services. Now, the services we have done extremely better because we are very competitive in the international market and we are also less costly. Ultimately, it comes back to the cost of production. So, any effort that helps in reducing the cost of production, I think, will lead to improvement in the competitiveness of the goods market also. Now, right now in India, I think the policy that we have may not be really conducive for the goods export. I think one of the negatives that I've been talking about for quite some time is the reintroduction of the import tariffs on all the commodities that we see. And again, for the students' benefit, I would like to tell you, post 1991, biggest reform happened was on the trade side, and that too on the import side, and that too on the import tariff side, where it has been brought down from 300 or 400% to the single digit, 9% or 8%. So now we are seeing a reversal of that. So maybe that will lead to reversal of the export growth also. So the protectionism and the cost of production, in fact, import tariff is nothing but export tax, right? So if that is the case, the policy that we have right now may not be really conducive, even if there is a large demand happening in the sector, and because of the rising cost of production in the Indian markets, the other markets like Vietnam, as talked about Morocco, they will take advantage of the rising cost of production in India. So I think we need to be careful when you talk about the trade policies. I hope the current budget will look at reversing that import tariff things. One small point I'll take half a minute about the manufacturing sector. Again, for the benefit of students, you have to go back to the typical production function approach. Right? Production function includes the the factors of production, land, labor, and capital, right? Now, if you take it for the service sector, you don't need to worry about the land, right? So it's only the labor and capital. So I think even in the labor, we have the service sector, we have seen much better people getting into the service sector market. So we are very competitive, so that's why we have seen, tremendous rise in the share of service sector and servicing the outside the country, not within the country, right? So, but when it comes to manufacturing sector, land becomes a very important issue. The labor market rigidity also becomes very important. So the land labor is something, the long pending reforms. I think once we do that, we will be able to do better in manufacturing sector.
All right, so thank you so much. I'll move to Ashwin sir. I would like him to give his closing remarks with a thought in mind that, sir, do you think that the approach towards development as of now we have is obviously going to be very important for us, but do you think it ensures uncompromised growth prospects, especially keeping rural economy in mind, and at the same time we will be able to address the climate change challenges which we are talking about? So your take on that?
Thanks. So before that, I want to reflect on a quick point which all the co-panelists raised, and this is I'm more responding from a student of political science. So everybody spoke about data gap and who showed what gets measured gets done. The political perspective, I mean, like, who said that? Whoever said that. The political perspective is what is not done is not measured. So the reason there is a data gap, we are not reporting because we are not delivering development. And when the governments fail to deliver development, there's a concept in political analysis that they convert towards performance state. So if you look at, there have been several media reports around it. We have schemes where the advertisement has higher spending than actual implementation. So that's what is performance state. So you create an impression that something is happening, but there's nothing happening really. So then a related point with, which Professor Anumati raised about government having resources on certain areas but not having plans or ideas to implement. So there's several aspects to it, but one key aspect is the shortening political horizon. So earlier, at least, there was a 5-year vision, 5-year plan with institutional change. We're losing that. So we need to create incentives for our political leaders also. So when we think about development, we have to think about what are the political payoffs. Why a political leader would buy that. Now coming back to my area, so I think, as it has been said that energy is the driver of growth, economic growth. And I think this decade is crucial. I'm not saying India has another nearly 50 years to achieve net zero, and every country ultimately have to follow that path. But what we do in this decade, that will determine our development trajectory. So that's why this decade of, in fact now another 7 years is very important. So, and energy transition sort of gives us an opportunity to think about an alternative industrial strategy. So having been late in industrialization, we should treat it as an opportunity to we don't have to follow East Asia, Japan, or any other model. We have to think about what is the Indian model of development under the climate constraint. So I'll stop with that, and that's for everyone to think about.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much. I know our patience, we are losing on it. We are short of time and we are running short of time. So we'll just take 10 more minutes and we'll light up the whole session. I come to Pooja ma'am for her closing remarks. I think there are a lot of questions in everybody's mind, and I just want to reflect in her closing remark that what should be the strategy from here for India, because this is going to be a big challenge, the demography and the employability.
Thank you also for being so indulgent as the moderator. Before I respond to your question, I wanted to give an example, a way of saying, expressing that I always use when I speak with students on the point that Professor Bhanumurthy made on trade and competitiveness of trade. If you look at cricket and if you look at the cricket World Cup, do we ever say that the rules will be such that India will get to have an extra bowler or an extra batsman relative to the other teams from other countries? Or do we change the rules and yardsticks for other countries versus India to make India perform better? We don't do that. The reason we don't do, the reason we don't do that is because you win only when you're really, really competitive. So that's why protectionism and high import duties just doesn't work. It's counterproductive. Uh, um, for my closing remarks, I wanted to say that on our strategy, we are so dependent on individual excellence everywhere, be it policy making, be it corporate excellence, be it even politics. Our systems, processes, institutions, capacity is not good. So obviously we need to fix our education system immediately to reduce the gap between skills that make people employable. The curriculum needs to change, and even when you do high-tech science studies, do you have on campus commercialization of research? All the great things that you're doing in ISRO. Why is it such a small island? Why don't we have a wider why is that success not wider? We need to ask that question, and I think it brings me back to the point that I was making initially, that we just begin to chase, in my view, the wrong goals. We have converted our entire manufacturing debate into how we are going to take Apple away from China and bring it to India. That even the solution to our problem? Have we even understood what our problem is? And therefore, when we don't understand what our problem is, we don't get the right answer. What does it tell you, when we don't have our data systems in place? So I think, a big part of the strategy is to get the data systems in place so that we have a better understanding of what the problem is, what the gaps are, what is it that needs to be addressed. I think we just need to go back to the drawing board. And I think this is why the 1991 reforms were a success, because the technocrats had been working on it for almost 20 years. They had a good understanding of what was going wrong in the economy and what needed to be done. And after 20 years, circumstances were such that the politicians, there was a buy-in from the politician, they had no choice. Right now, even if there was such an opportunity, I'm afraid that we will not be able to capitalize on it because the technocrats have not done their job. There isn't any ready pipeline of steps number 1, 2, 3 to be undertaken. To have this second burst of reforms that will address all the problems. So I think what is needed is for there to be somebody to sit and think that what are the things that we need to do, and how the politics around will have to be managed, so that people just get jobs, and people who are going to create jobs just create jobs. Yeah.
Thank you so much, ma'am. And my last question and the last closing remark to Ankush sir, and I would request him to, just give us some insights that what should be the immediate strategy for us, keeping in mind that our population is also growing. We do have a very large inequality. What should be our strategy in terms of improving the human development?
Um, So a few things were mentioned in slide with regard to education, and also she spoke about it. So I'll briefly touch upon health. Uh, since you very rightly pointed out large population, and I think we we somehow need to figure out how our traditional system of medicine, including Ayush, can can complement, can supplement the allopathy. Okay, so it shouldn't be a case that a mosquito bites me and I'm running to AIMS. Of course, I'm assuming it's not a serious infection. So therefore, we need this capacity. Second, some sort of rethinking along the expenditure line. So reducing lot of out of expenditure burden by reorienting the government expenditure from current the nature of expenditure on current expenditure to capital expenditure. So these might be helpful.
All right, thank you so much. Thank you. I would like to thank all the panelists, Professor Bhanumurthy sir, Dr. Ashwini, Ms. Pooja Mehra, Dr. Ankush, for their insights. And I think we have deliberated on many key areas which India has been facing and India has been suffering with in terms of the economic development and growth, keeping development in the social sector and as well as the physical infrastructure we have been concerning about. It has been a learning experience for me as well as I hope that audience have got many key points where we can think about. And with this, I would like to thank all of them for their deliberations and thank the audience for their patient hearing. I'll just give it to the MCs for the further proceedings.
Thank you, dignitaries. Thank you, dignitaries, for the wonderful session. It was indeed an insightful and a knowledgeable one.
The Niti Aayog Chair, University of Rajasthan, releases its quarterly edition of the Economic Bulletin on issues of national state importance using the periodic data released by the government and other organizations, with an aim to provide an insightful review of the economic trends pertaining to different sectors of Rajasthan and Indian economy, and to contribute towards policy making. Now, I request all the dignitaries, father, faculty members, Niti Aayog Chair members, and students from Niti Aayog to come forward to release the Economic Bulletin by Niti Aayog Chair. Thank you, everyone.
It is not how much we give, but how much love we put into giving. A memento speaks for itself and always reminds us of the most beautiful memories. With this thought in mind, we would like to invite Reverend Father Dr. A. Angelo, SJ Principal, to facilitate our guest, Dr. N.R. Bhanumurthy, the token of gratitude. Thank you, Father. Thank you, sir. I again request Father Dr. Alex Angelo, SJ Principal, to present a gift of appreciation to Ms. Pooja Mehra ma'am. Now I request Reverend Father Dr. Alex Angelo, SJ Principal, to present a token of gratitude to Dr. Ankush Agarwal. I request Father to present a gift of appreciation to Dr. Ashwini K. Swenser. Thank you, Father. Thank you, sir.
The roots of all goodness lie in the soil of appreciation, of goodness, and to express our appreciation and gratitude, I would like to call Ms. Purvi Midatwal, Head, Department of Economics, to kindly come forward and deliver the vote of thanks.
Good afternoon, everyone. As we express our gratitude, we must never forget that the highest appreciation is not to utter words, but to live by them. With these words by John F. Kennedy, I feel honored and privileged to get the opportunity to propose a vote of thanks on this special occasion. To begin with, I would first like to thank Lord for making this happen and giving us the strength and fortitude to organize this event successfully. Next, on behalf of the Economic Society and the Department of Economics, I extend a very hearty vote of thanks to our esteemed resource persons, Professor N.R. Anumurthy, Ms. Pooja Mehra, Dr. Ashwini K. Swen, Dr. Ankush Agarwal, sir, for accepting our invitation at a very short notice and giving us an insight on various aspects of Indian economy at 2030. I would like to thank the management for always being there for us. First, I would like to mention Father Manager for always supporting us, Father Principal who always pushes us to walk an extra mile, and Father Raymond for their constant support in all the endeavors we pursue, Father Amal for his kind presence, Professor Meeta Mathur and Niti Aayog Chair members for extending their immense support and directions for organizing this program. I would like to thank Yashwardhan sir for moderating the session very well, and Ms. Sunita and Anisha for being the backbone of the department. The MCs for doing an excellent job and conducting the conclave flawlessly. I would also like to thank the media persons and sponsors for extending their support. I would like to thank the technical help and maintenance staff for always being available and without whom it was not possible to organize the program. As this program is a collective effort of many hands, so I extend my big thanks to the Economic Society, the President and the entire workforce of the department for their immense support. Thank you all for making this event a big success.
And last but not the least, I am thankful to all the participants without whom this event wouldn't have been successful. Thank you.
We extend a heartfelt gratitude to all of our speakers and moderators of the conclave for taking out time from their busy schedules and sharing their knowledge and valuable insights with us. It was indeed an eye-opening and discerning session. Now, I would like to take a moment to recognize the co-sponsors of this event, State Bank of India, Triumphant Institute of Management, event sponsors Kanishka Classes and EcoMock. Now, I would like to take a moment to honor our country. I kindly ask everyone to please stand up and show respect as we sing the national anthem. Let us all come together and show our love and loyalty to our great nation. Thank you everyone. I request everyone to be seated.
Last but not least, we hope that you found the presentations, discussions, and networking opportunities to be informative, thought-provoking, and valuable. Your presence and participation have made this event a success, and we couldn't have done it without you. Thank you again for being here, and we hope to see you again in the future. Before we conclude the event, I would like to invite all the dignitaries, department members, and student workforce to gather together for a group photograph. Please make your way to the front of the stage where we will take a picture to commemorate this special occasion.